face. I raised my pistol but couldn't fire. The struggle made a clean shot impossible. Russo managed to draw his combat knife, driving it through his attacker's skull. But more infected were seconds away. He looked up, meeting my eyes across the widening gap between boat and pier. "Get clear of the city," he shouted, retrieving his rifle as he backed toward the pier's edge. "Angel Island. It's defensible. Jump," I called back. He shook his head, firing controlled bursts at the approaching horde. "Too late. I'll buy you time." Mira caught my arm as I moved to jump back onto the pier. "Don't," she said, voice breaking. "He's right. The boat won't hold with more infected following." The current carried us away as Russo established a defensive position at the pier's end, infected converging from all sides. His rifle fired in measured bursts, each shot dropping an attacker, but they kept coming in overwhelming numbers. The last I saw of him, he was reloading with mechanical calm, completely surrounded but fighting with unwavering discipline. "He knew the odds," Danny said quietly, using an oar to guide our course. He made his choice. Behind us, the marina receded into distance, orange flames from the burning fuel truck casting everything in hellish light. Further explosions rocked the city as military jets continued their systematic destruction of transportation infrastructure. "They're sealing it off," Mira observed, watching another bridge collapse in the distance, containing the infection. The reality was more brutal. They were sacrificing everyone still trapped inside. Thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, abandoned to the infected, including Russo. The rowing boat drifted eastward, carried by current rather than engine power in the still evening air. The lights of Oakland's shoreline revealed similar chaos. Fires burning unchecked, infected wandering in growing numbers. No safe harbor there. Angel Island, I remembered Russo's last words. He said it was defensible. Danny nodded, adjusting our course with practiced strokes of the oar. Former military installation, natural barriers, minimal access points. If anywhere in the bay might be safe, that's it. The boat moved with agonizing slowness, each minute stretching as we watched the cities burn around us. No helicopters flew rescue missions. No boats patrolled the waters. The official response, it seemed, had shifted entirely to containment rather than evacuation. Angel Island grew larger as we approached, its shoreline blessedly free of infected. Danny guided the boat toward a small dock on the eastern side, using her oar with skilled precision. When the hull scraped against weathered wood, I jumped out with the mooring line securing us quickly. The island appeared deserted, emergency lighting at the ranger station providing the only illumination. We approached cautiously, Mira with her pistol ready, me with the combat knife Russo had given me, Danny carrying an oar like a staff. The building stood empty, no signs of military presence or infected. "Looks clear," Danny said, lowering her makeshift weapon. "For now." The station yielded valuable resources: emergency rations, bottled water, a first aid kit, flashlights, a hand crank radio. We treated our injuries in silence, the full weight of the day's events finally settling over us as adrenaline faded. Through the station's windows, San Francisco and Oakland burned on opposite shores of the bay. Military jets continued systematic strikes on infrastructure, ensuring nothing could cross from the infected zones to the wider region. We had been on watch for about 3 hours when we heard it, the rhythmic thump of rotor blades slicing through the night air. At first, I thought it was another military aircraft on a containment mission, but the sound was different, closer, more erratic. "Helicopter," Danny shouted, pointing to a wavering light in the darkness. The aircraft was flying low, its searchlight sweeping frantically across the island's terrain. The engine made a sputtering sound that even I recognized as mechanical trouble. "It's going down," Mira said, already moving toward the door. "We need to mark a landing zone." We grabbed the emergency flares from the ranger station and raced outside, spreading out across the clearing near the dock. The helicopter's descent was becoming increasingly unstable, its trajectory wobbly as it fought against some invisible force. "Here!" I shouted, igniting a flare and waving it in wide arcs above my head. Danny and Mira did the same, creating a triangle of red light in the darkness. "The pilot must have seen us," The helicopter banked sharply, aiming for our makeshift landing zone. But something was clearly wrong. The aircraft dipped dangerously to one side, nearly clipping the treetops before the pilot managed to correct course. When it finally touched down, it was less a landing than a controlled crash. The skids hit the ground hard, the entire frame bouncing once before the tail rotor struck dirt, sending a shower of sparks into the night air. Metal screamed against metal as the helicopter slid several yards before coming to rest, tilted at an unnatural angle. For a moment, everything was still. Then the side door slid open and a man tumbled out, crawling desperately away from the wreckage. "Help!" he shouted, his voice nearly lost in the dying whine of the engine. "We've got wounded," and one of them turned. We rushed forward, weapons ready. The man who'd escaped was dressed in civilian clothes, his face streaked with blood and sweat. "4 survivors inside," he gasped as we reached him. "And the pilot, he's alive but pinned. And Dean got bit during evacuation. He turned mid-flight. That's why we crashed." Screams erupted from inside the helicopter, followed by the unmistakable moans of an infected. I peered through the open door and saw chaos. The interior lights flickering, shadowy figures struggling in the confined space. Blood splattered the windows from inside. The pilot first, I decided, ducking into the cramped cabin. The cockpit had partially collapsed, trapping the pilot beneath twisted metal. 2 passengers, a woman in a blood-spattered navy pencil skirt and shredded silk blouse and a teenage boy, were pressing themselves against the far wall, trying to stay clear of the infected who had once been their fellow survivor. A 3rd passenger, an older man, was fighting to keep the infected at bay with what looked like a broken piece of the helicopter's interior paneling. Mira slipped past me, pistol raised. "Head shot," she reminded herself aloud, taking careful aim despite the confined space and poor lighting. Her first bullet caught the infected in the shoulder, spinning him but not stopping him. The second found its mark, entering through the temple and dropping him instantly. "Get them out," I told Danny, who began helping the shell-shocked survivors from the wreckage. The pilot was barely conscious, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. Part of the control panel had broken loose in the crash, pinning his legs. "We need to lift this," I told Mira, positioning myself at one end of the metal debris. On 3, we strained against the weight, muscles burning with effort. The metal shifted just enough for the pilot to pull himself free, a scream of pain escaping through clenched teeth as his injured leg dragged across the floor. "Cargo," he managed to say, pointing toward the rear compartment. "Supplies, military evac. We were supposed to reach Marin County Outpost." Outside, Danny had moved the other survivors to a safe distance. The teenager was sobbing quietly, the woman comforting him with an arm around his shoulders. The older man stood slightly apart, his eyes fixed on the burning cities across the bay. "We need to check for more infected," I said, retrieving a flashlight from my pocket. The rear compartment had been packed with supplies, medical kits, non-perishable food, bottled water, ammunition, and tactical gear. Military-grade provisions meant for an evacuation that would never happen now. In the corner lay the infected we'd neutralized. Once Dean, a young man in his 20s, now just another casualty of whatever hell had been unleashed upon the world. "Dean was fine when we took off," the woman in the tattered silk blouse explained as we began unloading supplies. "Said a crazy homeless guy had grabbed him at the evac point, but we didn't realize it was a bite. Started convulsing about 10 minutes into the flight. Turned before anyone could react. The pilot's condition was deteriorating rapidly." Mira, falling back on her paramedic training, examined him with practiced efficiency. "Compound fracture of the tibia," she reported. "Possible internal bleeding. He needs more than field first aid." We moved him into the ranger station, creating a makeshift medical bay with supplies from both our scavenged materials and the helicopter's cargo. The military-grade medical kit contained items Mira immediately recognized: pressure bandages, morphine auto-injectors, battlefield antibiotics. "This helps," she said, unpacking the supplies, but without surgery. The pilot, semi-conscious, seemed to understand his situation. "The outpost," he whispered. "Marin Headlands, Field Hospital." "Across the water," I said, looking out at the bay. The fires in San Francisco had diminished somewhat, but Oakland still burned bright. We'd never make it in a rowboat. Helicopters, done, the pilot confirmed. Fuel line, ruptured, engine damage. Danny, who had been inventorying our newly acquired supplies, joined us. We've got enough food now to last weeks. Ammunition, even some communications equipment, though I don't know if anyone's broadcasting. The 3 other survivors huddled together in the corner of the station, civilians caught in a catastrophe none of us had been prepared for. The teenage boy hadn't spoken a word since the crash, his eyes vacant with shock. The woman maintained a facade of composure that occasionally cracked, revealing raw fear beneath. The older man seemed resigned, as if he'd already accepted this new reality. We should bury the infected, I suggested, not wanting the bodies to remain inside the helicopter. And check the entire island at first light. Make sure we're really alone here. As we worked through the night, treating the pilot's injuries as best we could with Mira's guidance, securing the perimeter around the station, and organizing our supplies, a grim determination settled over our growing group of survivors. The pilot, despite Mira's best efforts, remained in critical condition. Without proper medical facilities, his chances were slim. Yet he fought, providing what information he could about military protocols, evacuation zones, and the last communications he'd received before all channels went silent. By dawn, we had established a rudimentary camp around the ranger station. The helicopter's supplies, combined with what we'd found, gave us a fighting chance at survival, at least in the short term. 12 hours, I said, checking my watch, somehow still functioning despite my swim. 12 hours since this started. Mira nodded, staring at the burning cities. I was intubating a car crash victim when the first infected reached the ER. Hospital protocol isn't designed for zombies. Is that what they are? Danny asked. I don't know, Mira admitted. The infection hijacks the brain, eliminates higher functions, leaves only aggression and the drive to spread through bites. Medically, they're still alive, but the person is gone. I thought of Diane from marketing, of the infected teen on the bridge, of Russo fighting his desperate last stand. People I'd known or just met, reduced to mindless predators or casualties of a collapse no one had anticipated. My phone had died hours ago, the final connection to my former life severed. I'd once commanded cutting-edge technology that could predict market shifts, analyze global data patterns, deploy resources across continents. Now I had a combat knife, a pistol with limited ammunition, and whatever skills I could adapt from my previous existence. What happens now? Danny asked, her voice quiet but steady, the practical question of a survivor. I looked across the water at the burning cities, then back at the island around us, defensible, isolated, with natural resources that might sustain survivors. We wait, see if the military establishes a presence here. If not, we survive on our own, Mira finished. The implications hung between us. No rescue coming, no return to normal. Just a desperate struggle to stay alive in a world transformed beyond recognition. Through the station windows, the fires continued burning across the water, a grim reminder of civilization's fragility. 12 hours. That's all it had taken for the world to end. From corporate power to desperate survival in less than a single day. The technology I'd helped create, the empire I'd built, the wealth I'd accumulated, all rendered meaningless in half a rotation of the Earth. What remained was far more basic, the will to survive, the capacity to adapt, and the realization that in this new reality, no one made it alone. I glanced at Mira and Danny, strangers hours ago, now the only connections I had in a drastically contracted world. The island stood silent around us, a temporary haven in a bay surrounded by chaos. Whether it would remain so, whether the military would come, whether we could survive if they didn't, were questions for tomorrow. For now, there was only this moment, this island, these people, and the long night ahead with its uncertain dawn to follow. Hello, survivors. Thank you for taking the time to... Hello, survivors. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the story. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel. We appreciate it, and thank you in advance. Please leave the name of the city you're listening from in the comment section below. It helps us see our reach in the community. Let's start the story. I was in the middle of a budget meeting when the world ended. 6 department heads arguing over fiscal allocations while I nursed my third coffee of the morning. The mahogany conference table gleamed under recessed lighting, a testament to the wealth and power that once resided in this building. We were discussing highway infrastructure, of all the mundane things, when my chief of staff burst through the double doors. His normally composed face twisted with panic. "Governor Neal, we have an emergency," he said, not even acknowledging the others in the room. "Multiple situations developing across the state. They need you in the command center. Now." The room fell silent. In my 4 years as governor of Pennsylvania, I'd handled floods, blizzards, industrial accidents, and civil unrest. But something in Ives's voice told me this was different. The slight tremor, the pallor of his skin. I excused myself and followed him down the corridor. The Capitol building in Harrisburg had always felt like a fortress. Classical architecture, marble columns, the reassuring weight of government. That morning, for the first time, those walls felt paper thin. "What are we looking at?" I asked as we hurried toward the Emergency Operations Center in the East Wing. "Reports coming in from Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Allentown simultaneously," Ives replied, his steps quickening. "Mass casualties, violence in the streets, hospitals overwhelmed, terrorist attack. That was our first thought, but it's stranger than that." He paused at the security door, swiping his key card. "The reports don't make sense. People attacking each other, biting. Numerous accounts of cannibalistic behavior." I almost laughed. It sounded absurd, utterly detached from reality. But Ives wasn't one for exaggeration or panic. I'd selected him as my chief of staff precisely because he remained level-headed during crises. The command center was already buzzing with activity when we arrived. Screens displayed news footage from major cities. Police radio chatter filled the air, and my emergency management team huddled around a central table covered with maps and reports. Dr. Barbara Wheeler from the State Department of Health stood slightly apart, her face illuminated by her tablet screen, expression grim. "Talk to me," I said, taking my place at the head of the table. Commissioner Sator from State Police stepped forward. "Governor, we've got what appears to be coordinated civilian attacks in major population centers. Started about 90 minutes ago. Hospitals reported patients with high fevers and aggressive behavior. Then violence erupted in multiple locations simultaneously." "Show me." He nodded to a technician who pulled up security camera footage on the main screen. The video showed a hospital emergency room in Pittsburgh. Medical staff attempting to restrain a patient. The patient, a middle-aged man in a hospital gown, broke free and attacked a nurse, biting deeply into her neck. Blood sprayed across white tiles. Other patients in the waiting area began exhibiting similar behavior, lunging at staff and other patients. My stomach clenched. "What the hell are we looking at?" Dr. Wheeler joined us at the table. "Governor, preliminary analysis suggests a pathogen, some kind of fast-acting virus that affects the brain. Incubation appears remarkably short, minutes to hours. Transmission through bodily fluids, primarily saliva and blood. Like rabies, much more aggressive, and unlike anything we've seen before." She adjusted her glasses. "The infected lose all higher cognitive function. They don't respond to pain or verbal commands. They just attack." I looked back at the screens, now showing similar scenes from across the state. Streets filled with panic, people fleeing, others pursuing with relentless determination, police attempting to establish cordons, quickly becoming overwhelmed. The red phone rang, our direct line to the Federal Emergency Response System. My Homeland Security advisor answered, his expression darkening as he listened. "Sir," he said, covering the receiver, "it's not just Pennsylvania. Reports coming in from New Jersey, Ohio, New York, Maryland. The entire eastern seaboard is experiencing similar outbreaks. The weight of 4 million lives settled onto my shoulders. My political career had been built on careful calculation, on navigating the complex waters of public opinion and partisan politics. Nothing had prepared me for this. Options, I demanded. We need to declare a state of emergency immediately, Ives said. Deploy the National Guard, close state borders, establish quarantine zones. Commissioner Sator nodded. We've already mobilized all available units, but they're being overwhelmed. The infected are difficult to stop. Standard protocols for riot control aren't working. What does that mean, difficult to stop, I asked. They don't respond to pain, sir. Tasers, pepper spray, even rubber bullets, they just keep coming. And their numbers are growing exponentially. Each person they attack becomes like them within minutes. The phone rang again. This time a direct call from the mayor of Philadelphia. I put it on speaker. Governor, we're losing the city. His voice was strained. Background noise, a cacophony of screams and sirens. Downtown is overrun. Police are retreating. Hospitals are death traps. We need the military. I'm declaring a state emergency, I assured him. National Guard units are mobilizing. Hold what perimeters you can. Establish safe zones. You don't understand. His voice cracked. These aren't rioters. They're not stopping. The line went dead. Dr. Wheeler's tablet chimed. She glanced at it, her face draining of color. Governor, I'm receiving data from CDC colleagues. This pathogen, it doesn't just kill. The infected remain mobile after clinical death. Brain activity continues in the stem, driving basic motor functions and aggressive behavior. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. You're telling me we're dealing with zombies? The word felt ridiculous coming from my mouth, utterly incongruous with official government briefings. In layman's terms, yes. Dr. Wheeler looked up from her tablet. And we have no treatment protocol, no vaccine, no containment strategy for this kind of threat. I turned to the screens again. In just the 2 hours since the first reports, the situation had deteriorated beyond recognition. Traffic jams clogged every major highway, people trying to flee the cities. Infected individuals moved through the gridlock, pulling people from vehicles. Each new victim became another attacker. Get me the president, I ordered. While my staff attempted to establish a connection to Washington, I drafted the emergency declaration. My hands shook as I signed the document, authorizing the full deployment of state resources and formally requesting federal assistance. The call to the White House finally came through, but it wasn't the president. It was the Secretary of Defense. Governor Davis, I'll be brief, he said, his voice tight. This situation is unfolding across multiple states. Federal resources are stretched beyond capacity. Military units are being deployed to establish quarantine zones, but it will take time. You need to implement immediate containment strategies. What kind of containment are we talking about? There was a pause on the line. The Joint Chiefs are recommending population center isolation. Use whatever forces you have to create defensible perimeters. Sacrifice the hot zones if necessary. The implication was clear. Sacrifice the cities to save the rest. Abandon millions to save millions more. That's not an option, I replied, anger rising. These are American citizens, my citizens. Then find another solution. Governor, because in 6 hours, this won't be your decision anymore. The line went dead. I looked around the room at my team. Dedicated public servants now facing an unimaginable crisis. They were waiting for me to lead, to make the impossible decisions. Dr. Wheeler, I need scientific options. If we can't cure it, how do we slow it down? She thought for a moment. The infected respond to stimuli, sound, movement, light. They pursue prey with unwavering focus. If we could create diversions, draw them away from evacuation routes. Commissioner Sator, coordinate with local law enforcement. I want evacuation corridors established. Use sound distractions to clear paths. And authorize lethal force against any infected individuals. Headshots only based on what we're seeing. He nodded grimly. Ives, draft an emergency broadcast. People need to know what's happening and how to protect themselves. No sugarcoating. Tell them to avoid population centers. Travel only if absolutely necessary. And, I hesitated, the words feeling surreal, destroy the brain of any infected individuals they encounter. The next hour blurred into a nightmare of escalating reports. Philadelphia's police headquarters fell. Pittsburgh's downtown was declared a no-go zone. Smaller communities reported infected appearing on their streets, suggesting the contagion was spreading along highway corridors. At 2 p.m., 5 hours after the first reports, we received word that New York City had been lost. The governor of New York was presumed dead after his motorcade was overrun while attempting to reach Albany. I was reviewing evacuation plans when Dr. Wheeler approached with her tablet. "Sir, I've been conferring with colleagues at the CDC, USAMRIID, and several university research centers. We've reached a consensus. Tell me there's a solution." Her expression told me otherwise. The infection rate is increasing exponentially. Models show total population exposure within 72 hours. We've identified the infection vector, but developing a vaccine would take months, even with emergency protocols. What are you suggesting? She took a deep breath. The only viable containment strategy is to eliminate the infection reservoirs. The major population centers are lost, Governor. If we don't act decisively, the entire state, potentially the entire eastern seaboard, will follow. You're talking about bombing our own cities, I said flatly. I'm talking about saving what we can. Her voice was steady, but I could see the cost of these words in her eyes. Thermal detonation would destroy infected neural tissue. It's the only certain method we have. I walked to the window. From the Capitol building, I could see the streets of Harrisburg. People were running, some driving on sidewalks, others abandoning their vehicles entirely. Police sirens wailed. In the distance, smoke rose from several buildings. The secure line rang again. This time, it was General Crosby of the Pennsylvania National Guard. "Governor, my units are in position around Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Allentown. But we're losing ground hourly. These things, they keep coming. Each one we take down, 5 more appear. I need authorization for artillery strikes on overrun sectors." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of generations looking down on me. The founding fathers who walked these same halls, the citizens who had elected me to protect them. How many people are still alive in those cities? General? Unknown, sir. Communications are sporadic. We've established evacuation corridors, but most civilians didn't make it out in time. Dr. Wheeler touched my arm. "If we wait, we lose everything, Governor. The infection doesn't slow down. It doesn't negotiate, it doesn't get tired. Either we strike now or we risk the entire state, potentially the eastern seaboard." I thought of my campaign promises: safety, security, prosperity. How hollow they seemed now. "General Crosby," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears, "you have authorization for targeted strikes on confirmed infection hot zones. Priority is protecting evacuation routes. Civilian casualties," my voice caught, "are to be minimized wherever possible." "Understood, sir," he replied. "I'll need that in writing. You'll have it in 5 minutes." After ending the call, I sat heavily in my chair. Ives approached cautiously. "Sir, the Capitol building security team is recommending immediate evacuation. The infected have been spotted 6 blocks from here." Outside, the wail of sirens grew louder. Gunfire popped in the distance. "Prepare the helicopter," I ordered. "Essential personnel only. Dr. Wheeler, you're with us. We need a secure facility to coordinate from." "The mountain bunker at Fort Mattis," suggested my Homeland Security advisor. "Built for nuclear contingencies. Self-sufficient. Defensible." I nodded, then turned to face the room full of dedicated public servants who had served alongside me through countless crises. None as terrible as this. "I'm not ordering anyone to come," I said. "This is volunteer only. Anyone who wishes to seek their families, you have my blessing." Half the room emptied immediately. people rushing to find loved ones while there was still time. I couldn't blame them. Part of me wished I could do the same, but my family had been lost years ago in the crash that had driven me into politics in the first place. Perhaps that was why I could make the call that others couldn't. I had already lost everything once before. As we prepared to leave, Colonel Priya from the Air National Guard arrived, breathless and spattered with blood that wasn't her own. "Governor, we have a situation at Willow Grove. 3 F-16 pilots are refusing the bombing order. They're calling it an illegal action against American civilians." "Put them on speaker," I demanded. When the connection was established, I didn't waste time. "This is Governor Davis. State your objections, Captain." "Sir, with respect, you're ordering us to bomb our own cities," came the reply. "There are still thousands of uninfected civilians trying to evacuate. This is a massacre, not a military action." "Captain, I understand your concern, but this infection, it spreads faster than we can evacuate. Every minute we delay costs more lives. We've established evacuation corridors. The strikes are targeted at confirmed hot zones only." "Not good enough, sir. I joined to protect American lives, not end them." I thought of the security footage I'd seen. The hospital overrun. The streets filled with the infected pursuing the living with single-minded determination. The clock ticking on our window to contain this. "Captain, I'm issuing a direct order. You will carry out your mission or you will be relieved of command and charged with insubordination during a state emergency." Silence filled the line. "These are our neighbors, Governor," the pilot finally said. "Our friends, our families." "They are not anymore," I replied, thinking of Dr. Weiss's briefing. "Whatever this infection is, it's turned them into something else. Something that will kill us all if we don't act now." More silence. Then, "I cannot in good conscience follow this order, sir." I looked at Colonel Priya, who nodded grimly. "Captain, you and the other dissenting pilots are hereby relieved of duty. Colonel Priya will take command of your aircraft." I paused, then added, "History will judge whether you were brave or foolish today. I hope you can live with whichever verdict it delivers." The helicopter was waiting on the Capitol roof when we emerged from the stairwell. The sky had darkened with storm clouds, as if nature itself was responding to the horror unfolding below. From our elevated position, I could see the spreading chaos in Harrisburg. Buildings burning, streets clogged with abandoned vehicles, figures moving with that inexorable drive we now recognized as the infected. As we lifted off, I heard the first distant thunder of artillery strikes at the city's edge. General Crosby was establishing a perimeter, drawing a line between the living and whatever these things were that used to be human. My secure phone buzzed with a text from the Secretary of Defense. POTUS authorizing full military response. Nuclear options being considered for major infection centers. Establish secure location and prepare for federal chain of command implementation. Nuclear options. The words blurred on the screen as the implications sank in. We were contemplating destroying our own cities to stop this plague. The helicopter banked sharply as we passed over a highway clogged with vehicles. Below, I could see people fighting on the road, some trying to defend themselves, others already turned, pursuing with that horrible single-mindedness. A gas station erupted in flames, the fireball momentarily eclipsing the horror below. "ETA to Fort Mattis is 20 minutes, the pilot announced over the intercom. "Be advised, we're receiving reports of infected at the outer perimeter. Base security is engaging." Dr. Wheeler gripped her tablet, knuckles white. "Governor, I'm receiving field reports from medical teams. The infection progression, it's accelerating. Time from bite to full conversion now averaging 7 minutes. 7 minutes from human to monster. The implications were staggering. No time for goodbyes. No time for understanding what was happening. Just a bite, a fever, and then the hunger. If we lose Fort Mattis, what's our fallback?" I asked Ives. "There is no fallback, sir," he replied quietly. "That's our last secured military installation with independent power and communications. After that," he didn't need to finish. "After that, we'd be just more survivors in a world coming apart at the seams." The radio crackled with an incoming transmission from General Crosby. Governor, first artillery strikes completed on Philadelphia's overrun sectors, requesting authorization to deploy thermite munitions. Conventional explosives aren't sufficient to ensure neural elimination of the infected. Thermite. It would burn at thousands of degrees, reducing everything, buildings, streets, bodies to ash. Nothing would survive. Not the infected, not any trapped civilians. Nothing. 6 hours ago, I had been discussing highway budgets. Now I was authorizing the incineration of the city where American independence was born. Authorization granted, I said, my voice hollow. May God forgive us. The helicopter descended toward Fort Mattis as the first fighter jets streaked across the sky, heading east toward Philadelphia. Below us, soldiers engaged clusters of infected at the base perimeter, the muzzle flashes visible even in daylight. Sir, the pilot called back. We have a problem. The landing zone is compromised. Infected have breached the outer fence. Through the window, I could see figures swarming across the tarmac. Some wore military uniforms, turned base personnel now hunting their former comrades. Alternative LZ? I asked. Negative. All accessible areas are overrun. Base command is requesting evacuation. They're abandoning the facility. I exchanged looks with Ives and Dr. Wheeler. 6 hours into this crisis, and we were already losing our last secure facility. Take us to the armory section, I ordered. We'll land on the roof and secure a path to the command bunker. Sir, that's not advisable. That's an order, Captain. The bunker at Fort Mattis is our only hope of coordinating a statewide response. We lose that, we lose everything. The pilot hesitated, then banked the helicopter toward the armory building. As we descended toward the flat roof, I unholstered the pistol I'd been issued, a weapon I never thought I'd need to use. Everyone stays together, I instructed my small team. Dr. Wheeler in the center. Her knowledge is our most valuable asset right now. The helicopter touched down with a jolt. Through the windows, I could see infected streaming across the base grounds, drawn by the sound of our arrival. Once we're inside, we head straight for the bunker access, Ives said, checking his own weapon. It's 3 levels down, heavy security doors. If we can reach it, we should be safe. As the rotor slowed, I took a deep breath and gripped my pistol tighter. I'd spent my career behind desks and podiums, making speeches and signing papers. Now I was preparing to fight my way through a nightmare. For what it's worth, I told my team, I'm sorry I got you into this, but I'm glad you're here. Dr. Wheeler managed a tight smile. The Romans had a saying, in times of peace, prepare for war. In times of war, prepare for peace. We'll get through this. Governor, and then we'll rebuild. The helicopter door slid open. The sounds of chaos, gunfire, screams, the distinctive moans of the infected, flooded in. Rain had started to fall, pattering against the rooftop. It was time to find out what kind of leader I truly was. The descent into Fort Mattis's command bunker felt like crossing a threshold between worlds. Behind us lay the remnants of order and civilization. Ahead, a future none of us were prepared for. The reinforced door sealed with a pneumatic hiss, cutting off the carnage above. Emergency lighting bathed the concrete corridor in a sickly blue glow as we moved deeper into the facility. The bunker had been constructed during the Cold War, designed to withstand nuclear strikes. Now it would face a different kind of apocalypse. Status report, I demanded as we entered the command center. A skeleton crew of military personnel manned various stations, their faces illuminated by monitor screens. Major Fay approached with a tablet. Governor Neal, sir. The situation continues to deteriorate. Philadelphia is approximately 60% overrun, Pittsburgh 45%, Allentown nearly 70%. The thermite strikes have slowed the infection spread in targeted zones, but they created panic among survivors. Many broke quarantine, fleeing into less affected areas. Of course, even with evacuation corridors established, people would run from explosions and fire. I closed my eyes briefly, bearing the weight of more lives lost due to my decisions. Dr. Barbara Wheeler joined us, her tablet displaying grim statistics. The infection rate continues to accelerate. Major hospital systems have collapsed entirely. A technician called out, "Sir, we have General Crosby on secure channel 3. I moved to the console. Crosby's face appeared, smoke visible in the background. "Governor, artillery strikes continue as authorized, but ammunition is running low. The thermite has been effective, but civilian casualties are significant. My units are establishing defensive positions along major highways, attempting to funnel survivors toward evacuation centers. What's the status of Fort Mattis's perimeter?" "Compromised on multiple fronts. The main gate fell 30 minutes ago. The barracks and administration buildings are overrun. Your bunker is secure for now, but surface access is limited." The lights flickered momentarily. "Backup generators are functioning properly," a technician reported. "But we detected a power surge. Something's happening topside." A new alert flashed across the main screen. "Perimeter breach, level 2. The infected have entered the facility," Major Fay reported, her professional demeanor cracking slightly. I looked around the room at the 24 personnel who represented what might be the last functioning government command center in Pennsylvania. "How secure is this bunker?" I asked. "3 reinforced doors between us and them," Major Fay replied, "each rated to withstand military-grade explosives. But if the infected breach the security checkpoints..." I made a quick decision. "I need volunteers. There are still people trapped in this facility. Doctors, technicians, soldiers. People we need. We're going up to get them and establish a secure zone. If we lose Fort Mattis, we lose our last command center." Ives stepped forward immediately. "Sir, with respect, you're the governor. We can't risk..." "What's left to govern, Ives?" I cut him off. "Cities burning. Citizens turning on each other. Right now, I'm just another person who can help save lives." 3 military personnel volunteered immediately, including Major Fay. Dr. Wheeler also stepped forward, surprising everyone. "Medical personnel may be trapped up there," she said simply. "I can help." The armory adjacent to the command center was well stocked. I selected a Benelli M4 tactical shotgun. Major Fay and the others opted for M4 carbines with attached flashlights. Dr. Wheeler took a 9mm sidearm and a medical kit. "Stay tight, watch your sectors, conserve ammunition," Fay instructed as we prepared. "These things don't feel pain, don't get tired, don't stop, headshots only." I chambered a round in the shotgun. "Let's move." The service elevator ascended smoothly, taking us from the safety of the bunker directly to the facility's main hangar, our best chance to establish a defensible perimeter. The doors opened with a soft chime that seemed obscenely normal given the circumstances. The hangar was partially overrun. Military vehicles sat in neat rows, some with doors hanging open. Half a dozen infected in military uniforms shambled between them, while a small group of survivors had barricaded themselves in a control room overlooking the space. "3-point formation," Fay whispered. "Governor, center, doctor, stay back. On my mark, execute." We moved with coordinated precision, Nated. The first infected fell to Fay's headshot, the sound drawing the attention of the others. I dropped 2 with the shotgun, their heads disintegrating in a spray of bone and tissue. The remaining soldiers eliminated the rest with methodical efficiency. "Control room secure," one of the soldiers called after checking the survivors. 3 technicians and a communications officer, shaken but uninjured. "There are more survivors trapped in the West Wing laboratories," one technician reported. "At least 15 personnel. They've barricaded themselves in, but infected are in the corridors." I looked at Fay. "That's our next target." The journey through the facility was a calculated assault. We moved room by room, corridor by corridor, eliminating infected and rescuing trapped personnel. Dr. Wheeler treated injuries as we went, stabilizing the wounded for evacuation back to the bunker. In the laboratory wing, we encountered the heaviest concentration of infected. They pounded against reinforced glass doors, drawn by the movement of scientists inside. Behind us, the rescued personnel we'd gathered followed closely, clutching whatever weapons they could find. "There's too many for a direct assault," Fay observed. "We'll burn through our ammunition before we get halfway down that corridor." I studied the situation. Noticing the facility's PA system, we need a diversion, something to draw them away from the labs. A helicopter pilot we'd rescued spoke up. "Sir, I can help with that. My Black Hawk is still on Helipad C, fully fueled. It has external speakers for crowd control operations." "Can you fly it remotely?" I asked. "No need, sir. I can fly it myself. Low pass over the facility, sound blaring. Those things will follow the noise. Just need someone to get me to the helipad." It was a suicide mission. We all knew it. Once he drew the infected away, he'd have nowhere safe to land. "I'll get you there," I said before anyone could volunteer. "Governor," Faye began to protest. "That's an order, Major. Keep everyone here until my signal." The pilot, Captain Anderson according to his name patch, nodded grimly. We slipped out through a maintenance access, using service corridors to avoid the main concentrations of infected. The helipad was on the east wing roof, accessible via an external stairwell. As we climbed, I glanced over the facility grounds. Hundreds of infected wandered below, some in civilian clothes, others in military uniforms or lab coats. Former colleagues, constituents, citizens, all reduced to mindless predators. "Why are you doing this?" "Sir?" Anderson asked as we reached the helipad. His helicopter sat untouched, ready for flight. "Because every person we save today is one more chance for humanity tomorrow," I replied. "Now go. Make it count." Anderson saluted sharply, then sprinted to the Black Hawk. Within minutes, the rotors were spinning, the aircraft lifting off the pad. As promised, he activated the external speakers, blasting a siren that echoed across the facility. The effect was immediate. Infected began streaming toward the sound, drawn by the overwhelming stimulus. I used the distraction to return to our group. As Anderson's helicopter circled the perimeter, the concentration of infected in the laboratory wing thinned considerably. "Now!" I ordered, and we surged forward. The rescue operation succeeded beyond expectations. Not only did we extract the laboratory personnel, but we found more survivors barricaded in offices and storage rooms along the way. By the time we returned to the hangar, our group had grown to over 30 people. Outside, Anderson continued his diversionary flight, drawing more infected away from the facility. Through the hangar's massive windows, I watched his helicopter disappear over the horizon, leading a trailing horde of infected into the countryside. A deliberate sacrifice that saved dozens. The hangar, laboratories, and adjacent sections became our secure zone. Teams worked systematically to barricade entrances, establish defensive positions, and inventory supplies. Within hours, Fort Mattis's core was secured. The infected contained to peripheral areas or drawn away completely by Anderson's diversion. I returned to the command bunker to find it transformed into a war room. Maps displayed infection spread across not just Pennsylvania, but the entire eastern seaboard. Red zones indicating total infection domination expanded hourly. Yellow zones representing contested areas shrank correspondingly. Green safe zones were becoming increasingly rare. Ives joined me, his normally immaculate appearance now disheveled from stress and exertion. "Sir, we've received priority communication from Washington. The President is implementing continuity of government protocols. Military forces are establishing a secure zone in the Midwest, away from major population centers. They're abandoning the East Coast, I realized, writing us off. They're calling it a strategic withdrawal," Ives corrected diplomatically. I studied the map, the reality sinking in. Pennsylvania was effectively lost. So were surrounding states. Every decision we'd made, while logical at the time, had somehow made things worse. But we weren't finished yet. "New plan," I announced. "We stopped thinking like a government trying to maintain order. That world is gone. We start thinking like survivors." I pointed to the map. Fort Mattis sits at a strategic crossroads. Major highways, railway lines, all passing nearby. That's how the infection spread so quickly. But we can use those same corridors to our advantage. "How?" Dr. Wheeler asked. "We'll conduct coordinated rescue operations, focusing on pockets of survivors. Establish a network of secure zones around critical infrastructure. Power plants, water treatment facilities, agricultural centers, things we'll need to rebuild. Ives looked skeptical. Sir, with respect, that's not a government response. That's a guerrilla tactic. Exactly. Governments have failed. Time to adapt. I turned to the communications officer. Contact any remaining National Guard units. Tell them to prioritize securing food production facilities, medical stockpiles, and power generation. Forget about cities. They're lost. General Crosby arrived by helicopter just after sunset, his uniform splattered with dried blood, his face haggard. Governor, he greeted me with a weary salute. My command staff and I were forced to abandon our forward position when it was overrun. Glad you made it, I replied. We're implementing a new strategy. Forget about containing the infected in cities. We're focusing on rural infrastructure, establishing defensible zones around critical resources. He nodded, unsurprised. Already started similar operations with my remaining units. The conventional military response has failed. Time to fight asymmetrically. Exactly. Welcome to the Resistance, General. The main screen flickered with incoming transmission. Satellite imagery showed a massive explosion in central Philadelphia, far larger than our artillery strikes could produce. Federal response, Crosby confirmed. They're using heavier ordnance now, trying to create fire breaks between major infection zones. As night fell, I stood on the facility's cleared rooftop, surveying the darkened landscape. City lights that should have dotted the horizon were absent, replaced by scattered fires. For the first time in 12 hours, I felt something like hope. Not for a return to normalcy, that world was gone, but for survival, for adaptation, for the chance to build something new. Major, I said to Faye, who had joined me on the roof, find me a weapon better suited for field operations than this shotgun, and gear that can withstand combat conditions. She raised an eyebrow. Sir, I spent my career behind desks, making decisions that others implemented. That ends today. If we're going to establish secure zones, rescue survivors, reclaim what we've lost, I'm going to lead from the front. With respect, Governor, you're too valuable to risk in combat operations. Your leadership is meaningless if I don't share the risks. I interrupted. The people out there don't need a politician anymore. They need someone willing to fight alongside them. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. I'll have gear prepared. The sun would rise in a few hours on a changed world. Cities in flames, millions transformed into monsters, government and military in retreat. But here, in this small corner of a collapsing nation, we had found purpose. Not just to survive, but to rebuild, to reclaim, to fight. I am Governor Neal of Pennsylvania. Or I was. Titles mean little now. What matters is what we do next. How we adapt. How we protect what remains. The infection took our state in 12 hours. But they haven't taken our resolve. They haven't taken our humanity. And as I prepare to lead the first recovery mission at dawn, I make this promise to whatever is left of my people. We will survive this. We will find a way forward. And someday we will rebuild from the ashes of what was lost, even if I have to kill every last infected myself. Hello, survivors. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the story. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel. We appreciate it, and thank you in advance. Please leave the name of the city you're listening from in the comment section below. It helps us see our reach in the community. Let's start the story. The clock on the courthouse wall read 8:47 a.m. when everything changed. I remember checking it as I sipped my lukewarm coffee, thinking about how many hours remained in my shift. Deputy Toby Guard, 7 years with the Monroe County Sheriff's Department, stationed at the courthouse for what should have been another mundane Tuesday in October. I was standing in the second-floor hallway, chatting with Bailiff Dillon about the weekend's baseball game, when the first scream tore through the building. It came from below, a sound I'll never forget. Not the typical yelling from the holding cells we'd grown accustomed to, but something primal. Something wrong. Probably Taylor again, Dylan said with a tired sigh. Guy's been raising hell since they brought him in. I wasn't convinced. That didn't sound like Taylor. My radio crackled before Dylan could respond. Code 36 in the holding area. Officer down, need immediate assistance. The voice belonged to Jack, a veteran with 15 years experience. I'd never heard him sound like that, raw panic bleeding through his professional demeanor. We bolted toward the stairs, drawing our weapons. 3 other deputies converged from different directions, faces tense. The courthouse housed 8 courtrooms, administrative offices, and a temporary holding facility in the basement where detainees waited for their hearings. The basement door was secured by keycard access. I swiped mine, hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. The lock disengaged with a mechanical click that seemed unnaturally loud. The metallic smell hit me first. Blood, so much blood. Then came the sounds. Wet, tearing noises and a guttural growling that raised the hair on my neck. "What the hell?" Dylan whispered beside me. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting stuttering shadows across the scene before us. Jack lay on the ground, eyes wide and unseeing, throat torn open. Bent over him was detainee number 4387, Taylor, his mouth dark with blood, hands shredded from what looked like desperate attempts to break out of his restraints. The floor around them glistened crimson. But Taylor wasn't alone. 2 other detainees were free from their cells, one feasting on the booking officer while another clawed at a paralegal who'd come to collect paperwork. The paralegal, Liam I think his name was still alive, screaming as fingers dug into his abdomen. "Monroe County Sheriff's Department, on the ground now," I shouted, falling back on training that suddenly seemed inadequate. Taylor looked up, and I saw his eyes, clouded, white and pale, devoid of humanity. Blood and tissue clung to his chin. He rose with movements that seemed disjointed, head twisted at a severe angle, and charged. I fired in panic. First shot missing completely, second grazing his shoulder, third hitting his chest. He stumbled briefly but kept coming. I fired again, hitting him twice more in the torso. Blood bloomed across his prison jumpsuit, but he barely slowed. Dylan emptied his magazine in a desperate volley, bullets punching through Taylor's abdomen, shredding muscle and tissue. The detainee staggered but continued his relentless advance. Only when Deputy Garcia put a round directly through Taylor's forehead did he finally collapse, body dropping to the floor in a lifeless heap. The other infected detainees turned toward us, drawn by the gunfire. I adjusted my aim, remembering Garcia's successful shot. This time I aimed higher. My bullet caught the second detainee just above the left eye. He dropped instantly. Dylan took down the third with a headshot, his hands steadier now that we understood what worked. But it was already too late for the booking officer and Liam. They convulsed on the floor, skin ashen, veins darkening beneath their skin. Whatever this was, it worked fast. "We need to lock this down," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "Secure the remaining detainees, call for medical—" The booking officer's body jerked violently, then went still. Seconds later, his eyes snapped open, now white and clouded, replacing his usual brown. He lurched upward with frightening speed. "Fall back!" I yelled. "Get to the door!" We retreated, firing as we moved. The newly turned booking officer and Liam pursued with relentless, predatory focus, oblivious to the bullets tearing into their torsos. Only precise headshots brought them down permanently. We made it back to the stairwell, slamming the heavy door shut behind us. I engaged the emergency lock, a feature installed after a courthouse shooting 3 years ago. "What just happened?" Dylan gasped, leaning against the wall. "I don't know," I said, "but we need to evacuate the building." I tried raising dispatch on my radio. Nothing but static. Cell phones showed no service. Whatever was happening, communications were already affected. "We go floor by floor," I decided. "Evacuate everyone. Secure all entrances and exits." The sound of glass shattering above us cut through our planning. Then screaming, multiple voices from the first floor. "It's spreading," Garcia whispered. We took the stairs upward, weapons ready. The scene that greeted us on the first floor mirrored the basement's chaos, but on a larger scale. 2 security guards were being overwhelmed near the main entrance. A cluster of infected, I couldn't think of them as people anymore, had broken through the glass doors. More infected poured in from outside. Judge Calloway staggered down the main corridor, blood streaming from a bite wound on his forearm. Behind him, his clerk pursued with predatory intensity I'd seen in Taylor's eyes. "Toby!" The judge recognized me, relief washing over his face. "Something's wrong with Nicole. She just attacked me during the Morton hearing and now—" He never finished. Nicole caught him from behind, teeth tearing into his neck with savage efficiency. I fired, putting her down with a headshot. The judge collapsed, blood pumping from his wound. "We can't save them all," Garcia said, pulling me back as I moved toward the judge. "Once they're bit, it's over." He was right. Already, Judge Calloway's breathing had become labored. His eyes